So Shridath Ramphal is a West Indian champion and hero. He's probably the only person still alive who has served the Caribbean from the West Indian Federation of 1958-62 through the creation of the Caribbean Free Trade Agreement, CARIFTA, in 1965, and the present Caribbean Community and Common Market, CARICOM, that started in 1973. He has served as Assistant Attorney General of the West Indies Federation, lead negotiator for the Caribbean with the European Economic Community for aid, trade, and investment, incorporated in the Lome I Convention, concurrently as Chancellor of 3 universities: the University of the West Indies, the University of Guyana, and the University of Warwick, Chairman of the West Indian Commission, Head of the CARICOM Regional Negotiating Machinery in trade and investment negotiations with the European Union, the United States, and Canada, facilitator for Belize in the mediation process over the Belize-Guatemala border dispute, legal counsel for Guyana in the successful Guyana-Suriname maritime arbitration before the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, and legal counsel for Guyana in the Guyana-Venezuela controversy at the International Court of Justice. So Shridath is widely known in the Caribbean, the Commonwealth, and global community simply as Sonny. Yet, he is the most decorated and honored of persons from the Caribbean, and more particularly, the West Indies. He is the recipient of the highest national awards of 22 countries and of the entire CARICOM region. The awards range from the United Kingdom, where he was twice knighted by the Queen, the highest honor of Guyana, the Order of Excellence, South Africa, Australia, Cuba, Egypt, Jamaica, to the Caribbean's highest distinction, the Order of the Caribbean Community. So Shridath has also been honored with honorary doctoral degrees from 21 universities, including Oxford, Cambridge, London, Yale, and the University of the West Indies. He is also a Fellow of the London School of Economics, Magdalen College, Oxford, and King's College, London. It was from King's College that he graduated as the first West Indian to gain a master's degree in law in 1952. Today he is recognized publicly and daily by King's College, which displays his photograph outside the university as one of its most distinguished graduates. Born in Guyana in 1928, Sir Shridath returned to the West Indies from his legal studies in London to serve first as Solicitor General of then British Guiana, before becoming Assistant Attorney General of the West Indies Federation. The collapse of the West Indian Federation disappointed him greatly. So committed a regionalist was he. But while the flame of regional integration flickered with the end of the Federation, it continued to burn in his heart. Called to serve his native Guyana as Attorney General in 1965, not only did he write that country's 1966 independence constitution, he was also present at Dickinson Bay in Antigua when the premiers of Antigua, Barbados, and Guyana asked him to draft the terms of the Caribbean Free Trade Agreement. The pebble tossed into the waters of the Caribbean Sea by the 3 Bs, Barrow, Burnham, and Bird, created a ripple that washed every Caribbean shore. Sir Shridath, first as Guyana's Attorney General and then as Foreign Minister, became known as Mr. Caribbean. He traversed the region, passionately arguing the case for Caribbean integration, at regional meetings of politicians and professionals, and in the halls of university campuses. Today, his many speeches and statements during that period form an integral part of the Caribbean integration process that found its pinnacle in 1973 when the Caribbean Community and Common Market, CARICOM, was launched. with the signing of the Treaty of Chaguaramas in 1973 in Trinidad. Highly regarded by Caribbean leaders, Sir Shridath was entrusted with negotiations for the Caribbean as part of the newly formed African, Caribbean, and Pacific ACP group with the European Economic Community. He had chaired the first meeting of non-aligned foreign ministers in the Western Hemisphere in 1972. From that meeting, two significant developments occurred. First, Guyana's Prime Minister Forbes Burnham concluded that it was time to end the U.S.-inspired embargo against Cuba, a Caribbean neighbor. Burnham entrusted the delicate and confidential task to Sir Shridath to win the support of Jamaica's Michael Manley, Trinidad and Tobago's Dr. Eric Williams, and Barbados's Errol Barrow to join him in this revolutionary move. Within 3 months, the four independent nations of the Caribbean established diplomatic relations with Cuba, ending the widespread embargo against their neighbor and opening the door for the more than 150 nations that transact business with Cuba today. During the same non-aligned foreign ministers' meeting, the idea of the ACP group was conceived. Little surprise, therefore, that not only was Sir Shridath chosen by the Caribbean as its lead negotiator, but Africa and the Pacific endorsed his proposal that the three regions should speak with one voice. The advantageous Lomé I Convention was the result of that remarkable display of unity by Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific in their joint negotiations with Europe. The Caribbean's Ramphal, Jamaica's P.J. Patterson, Trinidad and Tobago's William Demas, and Grenada's Alistair McIntyre were a dream team that served the region well in many capacities throughout its post-independence period. Sir Shridath was then elected, unopposed, to the post of Secretary General of the Commonwealth. He was the second of 6 persons to hold the post, and the only one to hold it for 3 consecutive terms, 15 years, from 1975 to 1990. At the Commonwealth, Ramphal became a key player in fighting to secure the right for Africans in Southern Africa to vote, wresting Southern Rhodesia from exclusive white control to create Zimbabwe, ending apartheid in South Africa, and freeing Nelson Mandela. When Mandela was freed from prison and went to England to be reunited with his African National Congress colleagues who were in exile, Sir Shridath Ramphal's home was his first port of call.
Where is Ramphal? Oh, welcome. This is the happiest day of my life.
Good to have you here. Hello, Mandy.
This has to be the happiest.
Oh my goodness.
And take care.
Very good, very good. But first, before you greet anybody, we want to have some pictures on the stand. Very good. Trevor? Very good. Yeah. Right. Yes, that's fine. That's fine. And we want to have you in the middle. Right. Yes. And Winnie? Yeah.
Where's Adelaide?
But can we have some now? And then we broaden it. Right.
I should have preferred to have Adelaide there, also here.
Where is Adelaide? Is Adelaide here yet? I don't think she's come yet. She's coming. She's coming.
Later, when Mandela became president of South Africa, ending apartheid, he said of Sir Shridath, "Some men have become famous because of the service they have given to their countries. Others have become well known because of the manner in which they have taken up issues affecting their regions. And others have become famous because in their fight for human justice, they have chosen the entire world as their theatre." Sir Shridath Ramphal is one of those men. Sir Shridath was the only person to have been a member of all the distinguished international commissions which shape the debate about key issues in the world. They include the Independent Commission on International Development Issues, the Independent Commission on Disarmament and Security Issues, the World Commission on Environment and Development, the Independent Commission on Humanitarian Issues, the South Commission, and the Commission on Global Governance. Two key figures dominated the Commission on International Development Issues, known as the Brandt Commission, after its chairman, former German Chancellor Willy Brandt. The two figures were former British Prime Minister Edward Heath and Sir Shridath, who described the work of the Commission this way.
Been trying to convey to the international community, to governments, and even more so to people, is that the world really has become a single global community now, a community of people, a community of nations, and we have got to see it in much the same way as we approach the problems of our own society and apply to those problems globally the principles and increasingly the mechanisms that we've applied at home to make our own societies, especially in Western Europe, more just.
Despite a successful life as an international statesman, Sir Shridath returned to service in the Caribbean, summoned by Caribbean heads of government to chair the West Indian Commission. The Commission's task was to plot a course for the Caribbean's future. Its report, Time for Action, became and remains a seminal work in Caribbean history, pointing to the region's future and underscoring the joint actions that governments needed to take. No other West Indian has traversed the global stage with the recognition and appreciation of the world. Even though Ramphal is indeed a man of the entire world, the Caribbean, and more particularly the West Indies that he served passionately and diligently, remains at the center of his life. He said of himself,
Personally, I have been a West Indian from the very first moment of awareness of such matters. And wherever I have lived in the region, in Guyana, in Trinidad and Jamaica, in Barbados, I have lived in my West Indian home.
in his 90th year, Sir Shridath was still an active international lawyer, co-agent for Guyana in its contention with Venezuela at the International Court of Justice at The Hague, and a lead lawyer in the arguments before the court. He is an internationalist, but first, he is a West Indian. In 2019, the Caribbean Court of Justice bestowed the Medal of Honor on Sir Shridath, saying of him,
"In the late 1940s, moved as a student in London by Jamaica's Norman Manley, he dedicated his life to the cause of West Indian integration, starting with the dissertation for his master's degree in 1952 entitled Constitutional Aspects of Federalism in the British West Indies. The internationalism of this outreach, the regionalism of this spirit, the jurisprudence of this quality combined to make a lasting monument to true service. And so it was, and is, with Sir Shridath."
Speaking on the occasion, Sir Shridath, internationalist and regionalist, issued this summons to the Caribbean.
Encouraging their societies to accept that excessive nationalism is the old enemy of freedom, and that from international justice they have nothing to fear and much to gain. All must help our generation to reach to such higher levels of perception and attainment within the wider framework of our being one nation, one region, one world, all of which we must share. Long may the court continue to enrich our regional civilization, and ever wider be the reach of the good that prevails. Thank you.
Sir Shridath Ramphal, international statesman, distinguished Caribbean legend, and an outstanding Caribbean hero.